stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and was driven by the demon out into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding. And the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country, the Gerasenes, asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got in the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. This is the word of the Lord. Let us pray. Gracious God, may we also proclaim all that you have done for us. May we do this through the large actions, but more especially through all the little ways, God. The ways that we can show compassion and kindness and mercy to all of your people. We ask now, God, that these words will be your words, that your good word will be planted in our heart. Let anything that is not of you, let that fall away like chaff. But in all things, God, may we work for your honor and your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. There are certain rites of passage that all people go through. And one of those is your first job. My first job was at the local movie theater. I thought it was going to be amazing. I thought you would just get to watch movies all day long and occasionally sell tickets and popcorn, but that wasn't exactly the case. I mean, I did all the things that you would expect. I mean, I did make popcorn, and I also cleaned the popper and sold the tickets and ran the concession. But then you had to clean the theater after every single showing, and you had to clean the bathrooms supposedly every 30 minutes, but really we just signed our name saying we had and didn't do it. It's a movie theater, what do you expect? So, now in many ways, that summer was a blast. I was working with friends, and I didn't mind the fact that I was making minimum wage, which at that time was $4.25 an hour. But at the end of the summer, after everything I had gone through, I made this vow to myself. I vowed that never again would I work a job in which I had to serve people. I told myself, never again, because during that summer, there were all these difficulties, because people can be difficult and obnoxious and really, really difficult to please. So of course, it makes absolute perfect sense that I would now do what I do as a minister, because I never serve people, and people in the church are never difficult or hard to please. Now I'll say that summer, by and large, most of the customers were totally fine. It's just some people who were a special challenge. And even now, whether in church or at your work, among your family, or just out and about in the world, some people are a special challenge. There are people who may make you uncomfortable, people you'd rather not deal with, people that, even though they've never done anything wrong to you, those who seem to go even one step beyond that, and they make us uncomfortable because they seem like they're so different from us. Whether that be the homeless or the mentally ill, those who live on the fringe of society. In our gospel lesson this morning, we encounter a person like that. Now, when people first read this lesson, I think they get caught up on the demon possession thing. We don't really witness things like that in America now. And so I think sometimes we let ourselves get distracted from the boldness of Jesus' ministry to this man and what its implications for us are. So let's put aside the demon possession for now. Because to me, whether this man was possessed by demons or just severely mentally ill is a somewhat moot point. Because regardless of what it was, this was a man who lived way outside the bounds of the traditional society, having been rejected by family and peers. And he was a man very much in need of healing. And when he first became ill, I'm sure that people would have tried to help him. But eventually it was just too much, and so they resorted to just trying to control and subdue him. The text says that they had tried tying him up to keep him from these outbursts, but that hadn't worked. They had chained and shackled him. But he had such enormous strength that he broke the chains. Not wiggled out, mind you. Not a Harry Houdini type of thing. It says he broke the chains and shackles. And now he lived in caves where people made their tombs rather than living in a home. He roamed about naked and dirty, and he was beyond the help of anyone in the village. And you know that for those folks, he would have been an object of ridicule, of scorn, and perhaps even a bit of fear. And then in comes Jesus. Just before this story, Jesus had calmed the chaos of the wind and the waves of the Sea of Galilee with but the command of his voice. And now he and his disciples have landed in this Gentile region filled with people who did not believe in the God of Israel and who were not looking for a Jewish Messiah. They were still a people in need of liberation and rescue, and the first person to run up to Jesus needed it more than anyone else. Jesus speaks to this man's need, identifies the problem, and then casts out the demons, allowing them to go to a herd of pigs. And those pigs then run off the cliff and into the sea. That's also an issue of struggle for people. I mean, why would Jesus allow demons to harm innocent pigs? Those pigs were people's livelihood. But let's also think about what those pigs were from the Jewish perspective. Pigs were an unclean animal. Jewish people couldn't eat them, couldn't touch them, couldn't spend too much time with the folks who did. So when Jesus entered this Gentile town, he's not only cleaning out the forces of the devil and purifying that town spiritually, but by sending the legion into the pigs, he's cleaning the town ceremonially. The town is being prepared to be holy. It's being prepared for the presence of God incarnate to come into its midst. But Jesus has also done something else here. He's opened up these people's hearts to them and revealed their life's true priorities for all to see. Now, I don't want to mean the loss of these pigs. Now, in some ways, maybe not being people who rely on a herd of pigs as much as they would have at this time, we could think, it was just a few animals, they'll get over it. But let's remember the economics of this. There were people watching over the pigs who saw this happen. I imagine, now that there are no more pigs, there is no more pig watching job. Someone else owned those pigs, and they just took a big loss. Someone else would have sold those pigs at market, and now none of those little piggies are going to the market. And there are still others who would have counted on those pigs for the meals and the food that they would provide. This was a huge action. Those pigs running off a cliff would probably be equivalent nowadays to someone who owns a small business that then, let's say, burns down to the ground so they have nothing, not even insurance on this. And if that were you, and you had a business that was now completely gone, how would you feel? Would you welcome the person that was responsible for this? Or would you want that person to leave? Because that's what the town did. The townsfolk, they come and they see this man who had been stark raving mad, possessed by demons, and now he's sitting at the feet of this foreigner. And he's clean. He's clothed, and he just seems so normal. And knowing who this man is, it's eerie that he of all people seems to be normal. I mean, what kind of power does the guy who did this possess? So the people are afraid. And the text says that they implored Jesus, please leave. Now let's also be honest about how they would have felt to have lost all of those pigs because of this one particular ill person. This was a person that they'd mistreated. They may have thought that they were doing these things to help him for his own good. But the moment when you shackle someone and bind them with chains, that person has been stripped of his humanity. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis notes that there's this odd phenomenon that occurs whereby our actions influence our feelings, often more than our feelings influence our actions. And so if in our actions we mistreat someone, we'll find that we like that person even less than before we had mistreated them. So if you harm someone, you'll find that after harming them, you like them even less than you did before. Now he argues that the flip side is also true, that by doing good to someone, you'll find that you like them more than you did before. These townspeople had spent a good deal of time doing harm to this man because they feared him, because he was different, because he was ill. See, the message behind Jesus' action is bold, and it will strike us to the core even now. Jesus reveals that when it comes down to priorities, he cares more about healing and wholeness than he does financial security. Jesus cares more for this one man than for a whole herd of pigs. He is more concerned with the restoration of one than he is with the pocketbooks of many. Jesus was willing to let someone else's finances suffer so that this one rejected man living on the fringe of society could be brought back into the fold of community. Jesus' mercy is greater on individuals than it is on our wallets. Now, in some ways, if you think about it, that seems like an easy life lesson. I mean, of course God cares more about people than he does our money. But do we live in that knowledge? I mean, do we care more about the people who make us uncomfortable or who annoy us or who live on the fringe of society? Do we care more for them and for their relationship with God than we care about the money in our wallets and the comforts we long for? Because I doubt it. I don't think and part of that's because I don't even know if I know where to begin. But that's the example of Jesus. We need to care more about individuals in need of healing and wholeness more than we care about our comfort. Now the reason this is difficult is because it's not something that calls us to grand action, but instead it's something that challenges us on the little things on a daily basis. I mean, think about it. In some ways, it would be so much easier if we could just make one big, grand, magnanimous gesture. And after that, we'd be free to live our lives however we wanted, instead of the daily reminders and interruptions that come up otherwise. I was reading somewhere this week that married couples who make it a point to have small, inexpensive date nights on a monthly basis report a higher degree of marital happiness than couples who take one big annual vacation. The idea being, it's not the big things that count in the relationship, it's all those little things that add up that in the end make us happier. I think spiritually, it's got to be the same way. I mean, we can practice those little things now. Teresa of Lisieux, a saint from the 19th century, was convinced that Jesus is more pleased with a life lived faithfully, serving in what she termed the little way, than he is in grand gestures. In short, she said, to seek out the menial jobs, to welcome unjust criticism, to befriend those who annoy us, and to help those who are ungrateful. This, she said, was a better way to love and serve God than these occasional feats of great faith and great giving. And the beauty of this is that it's available to all of us, regardless of our station in life, regardless of our income, and regardless of how far we've advanced spiritually. We are all capable of this ministry of the little things. Hardly a day goes by when we're not able to offer a smile to an annoying coworker, to listen attentively to those who receive so much pleasure from the sound of their own voice, or just simply to extend kindness to those that the world rejects. This little way, as she termed it, will allow our hearts to grow in love, not just for God, but for those around us. This is what the townspeople could have done for this man that they had cast to the fringe of society instead of chaining him like an animal. And it's what we can do for those that we encounter as well. Now, following in this little way may seem trivial or even slightly meaningless, because no one will ever notice us for this. No one will ever pat us on the back or tell us what a faithful Christian we are. And that's the point. Living in the little way doesn't bring attention to us, doesn't feed our ego, but instead it's a ministry of kindness and compassion that we can do to others without them even realizing that we are being kind or compassionate to them. It's about a way to grow spiritually and to take on the heart of Jesus, not in order to be seen by people, but in order to serve God. But of course it can be challenging. And often it seems that Jesus calls us to do the difficult things. After Jesus had healed this man, the man was so grateful. And he wanted to leave everything that he had ever known, his people, his culture, his home, just to follow this Jewish Messiah around. Now that was a grand gesture. It would be a big, sweeping action. But this time, Jesus doesn't bid him, come and follow me. Instead, he tells the man, stay where you are, where people know you, and tell them what God has done for you. Jesus told the man not to do the grand gesture, but to remain where God had already placed him, and to be faithful in the small things of telling his story. Imagine the power of that man's testimony. Now, I imagine that this man would have been a little bit disappointed by that he had wanted to follow after Jesus. But I would also say that Jesus has challenged the man with a more difficult task, because those people that Jesus sent him to, they knew him. They knew what he had been. They'd been afraid of him. They mistreated him, and they probably did not like him. And now, they're probably even more upset with him because of him, they now don't have this herd of pigs. But Jesus told the man to be faithful where he already was and to witness to what God had done in his life. And so that's what this man did. He went about telling people all that Jesus had done for him. It's so easy to envy those that we see going off doing these grand things. And we wish that we could do the big things as well. Going off on the international mission trip, working to rebuild homes after hurricanes, giving large amounts of money to the needy. And those are great things, but often God calls you to be faithful in the little ways. God calls you to show kindness to others, to be a friend to those people who in the end want nothing more than that. A friend. To listen to lonely people who just want someone to be there as they tell their stories and are able to, in some small way, relive those good moments. And they're telling them to you. I mentioned at the beginning of this that at the end of my summer working in a movie theater, I swore to myself that I would never again have a job that involved serving people. And of course now I can be amused at the irony of that and the call of God in my life. But in some ways I would still tell you that I don't have a job of serving people. I don't. I have a calling that involves serving God in whatever form that takes. And so do you. So do all Christians. We are all called to serve God and to prioritize that above everything else in our life, above our idols, above our wallet, above our desire for comfort. And this is most convincingly done by living our lives following after Jesus in the little ways. Amen.